You don't feel sick, you don't feel broken, but something inside you doesn't feel like the man you used to be, and you can't explain why. Let me ask you something. Honestly, have you ever looked in the mirror and thought, I'm still doing everything right, so why do I feel weaker, slower, less driven? You're not alone, and more importantly, you're not imagining it. There's a quiet struggle happening in millions of men today, not loud, not dramatic, no sudden collapse, just a slow shift. Energy that doesn't come back, motivation that fades, strength that takes longer to build or disappears faster than it should, sleep that doesn't restore you, confidence that feels muted. And here's the most dangerous part. Most men don't see it as a problem. They call it stress. They blame work. They say it's age. They tell themselves, this is just how life is now. But what if it's not? What if your body has been sending you signals, quiet ones, that something fundamental is changing? Low testosterone doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't always show up as a medical emergency. It slips in quietly, reshaping how you feel, how you think, how you perform, and how you see yourself, long before most men ever consider getting it checked. And because men are taught to push through, to stay silent, to man up, these signs often go ignored for years. This video isn't about fear, it's about awareness. Because once you understand what your body is actually telling you, everything changes. The way you train, the way you recover, the way you protect your future strength and vitality. Today, we're going to talk about the silent signs of low testosterone that most men overlook, not in medical jargon, not in extremes, but in real, lived experiences that you may already recognize in yourself. If you've ever felt like your body is aging faster than your mindset, if you've ever wondered why your drive doesn't match your discipline anymore, if you've ever thought, I should feel better than this, then watching this until the end may completely change how you understand your body, your energy, and your future. Because the signs are there. They're just quieter than most men expect, and once you learn to recognize them, you can no longer unsee them. It often starts in ways so subtle that you barely notice them at first. You're still getting through your day. You're still showing up for work, family responsibilities. On the outside, everything looks fine, but inside, something feels slightly off. Your energy doesn't rebound the way it used to. Motivation feels delayed, like it needs a push instead of arriving naturally. And because nothing feels dramatic, you tell yourself it's normal. You tell yourself this is just what happens after a certain age. But this is exactly how the earliest signs of low testosterone tend to show up, quietly, gradually, without alarms. You wake up tired even after a full night in bed. Not exhausted, just not restored. Coffee helps, but only for a while. By mid-afternoon, your focus slips. Tasks that once felt manageable now feel heavier. You still get things done, but it costs more effort than it should, and you start to accept that as your new baseline. Then there's the way your body responds to effort. You may still work out, but the results don't match the input anymore. Muscle feels harder to build and easier to lose. Recovery takes longer. Small aches linger. Even when your routine hasn't changed, your body feels less cooperative, like it's operating under different rules. Emotionally, the shift can be even harder to recognize. You may feel flatter than before, less sharp, less driven. Things that used to excite you now feel muted. Your patience is shorter. Your tolerance for stress is lower. You don't feel depressed in a clinical sense, but you don't feel fully alive either. It's more like your internal volume knob has been turned down. Many men describe it as losing their edge, but not knowing why. Confidence can also take a quiet hit, not confidence in the loud, obvious sense, but the steady internal belief that you can handle whatever comes your way. You hesitate more. You second-guess decisions you would have made quickly before. You feel capable, but not powerful. And because this happens slowly, you adapt without realizing you're adapting downward. One of the most misleading aspects is how easy it is to blame everything else. Stress at work, poor sleep, aging parents, more responsibility, less time for yourself. All of those factors are real, but they often mask what's happening underneath. Testosterone isn't just about muscle or sex drive. It plays a role in how resilient you feel, how clearly you think, and how much energy you bring into your life. Another early sign men tend to ignore is the change in body composition. Fat begins to collect in places it never used to. The waist thickens even if your diet hasn't changed much. Shirts fit differently. You may tell yourself you just need more discipline, but discipline alone doesn't explain why your body is responding differently than it did a decade ago. Sleep can also shift in subtle ways. You fall asleep easily, but wake up earlier than you want. Or you wake up during the night and can't fully settle back in. Mornings don't feel refreshed. Over time, this compounds everything else. Energy drops further. Mood follows. What makes all of this especially dangerous is how normalized it becomes. You look around and see other men your age feeling the same way. Tired, stressed, running on autopilot, so you assume it's universal and unavoidable. You don't complain because nothing seems wrong enough. But your body is not failing you. It's communicating with you. Low testosterone doesn't suddenly arrive one day. It trends downward over years, and the earlier signals are meant to be noticed, not ignored. When you miss them, you don't just lose energy, you lose momentum. You slowly drift away from the version of yourself that felt strong, focused, and capable. Awareness is powerful here. Simply recognizing that these changes are not random gives you back a sense of control. You stop blaming yourself. You stop assuming decline is inevitable. You start asking better questions about your health, your habits, and your long-term vitality. Because the truth is, the men who age best aren't the ones who push harder through fatigue. They're the ones who listen earlier and respond intelligently. And the moment you stop dismissing these quiet signals is the moment you begin reclaiming your strength. As this continues, the most confusing part for many men is how energy starts slipping without a clear reason. You're not lazy. You're not unmotivated by choice. Yet the internal drive that once pushed you forward now feels inconsistent. Some days you feel almost normal. Other days, even simple tasks feel heavier than they should. And because the drop isn't dramatic, it's easy to ignore. This is where low testosterone quietly changes how your energy system works. Energy isn't just about how many hours you sleep or how much coffee you drink. It's about how efficiently your body converts effort into output. When testosterone is healthy, you wake up with a natural readiness to engage with the day. You don't need to hype yourself up just to start moving. Action creates momentum. Effort feels rewarding. When testosterone begins to decline, that loop weakens. You still want to do things, but starting takes more mental effort. Focus doesn't lock in as easily. You read the same paragraph twice. You open your phone without knowing why. You walk into a room and forget what you came for. It's not severe enough to panic you, but it's frequent enough to frustrate you. At work, this often shows up as mental fatigue. You're capable, experienced, and skilled, yet your mind feels slower to respond. Decision-making takes longer. You hesitate where you once acted. By the end of the day, you're drained, not because you did more, but because everything required more effort. And then there's motivation. This is the part men rarely talk about openly. Testosterone plays a role in how driven you feel to pursue goals, solve problems, and take initiative. When levels dip, motivation doesn't disappear completely. It becomes conditional. You only feel driven when pressure is high or consequences are immediate. Long-term goals lose their emotional pull. You still care, but you don't feel the same internal fire. This can affect your personal life too. Projects you once enjoyed feel like obligations. Hobbies get postponed. Even social interactions can feel tiring. You may find yourself choosing rest over engagement more often, not because you want isolation, but because your energy feels limited and you're trying to protect it. What's happening underneath is not weakness, it's efficiency loss. Low testosterone reduces how effectively your body supports sustained effort. Muscles fatigue faster, the brain tires sooner, recovery takes longer, so your system starts conserving energy by pulling back from anything that feels optional. Over time, this creates a smaller life without you consciously choosing it. Another subtle shift is how stress feels. Challenges that once energized you now feel overwhelming. You become more reactive. Small problems feel bigger. This isn't because you're less capable. It's because testosterone helps buffer stress and support resilience. When it drops, your tolerance drops with it. Many men respond by pushing harder, more caffeine, longer hours, less rest. That works temporarily, but it comes at a cost. The body interprets constant strain as a signal to conserve even more energy, so the fatigue deepens, focus narrows, motivation fades further, and the most frustrating part is that no one teaches men to recognize this pattern. You're told to be disciplined, to grind, to stay tough, but discipline without biological support eventually turns into burnout, and burnout doesn't always look like collapse. Sometimes it looks like quiet disengagement from your own life. This is why awareness matters so much. When you understand that energy and motivation are not purely mental traits, you stop blaming your character for what is actually a physiological signal. You stop asking why you're not trying harder and start asking what your body needs to function better. This shift alone can be relieving. It reframes the problem from personal failure to system imbalance. And once you see it that way, solutions become possible. Sustainable energy comes from alignment, not force, from supporting the systems that create drive, not punishing yourself for losing it. You were never meant to feel exhausted just to prove your worth. The real danger isn't low energy itself. It's accepting it as normal and slowly shrinking your expectations of what your life can feel like. Because the moment you stop dismissing that quiet loss of drive is the moment you give yourself permission to reclaim it. As this pattern continues, many men notice changes that don't show up on the outside but feel heavy on the inside. Your body may still function, your schedule stays full, and your responsibilities don't slow down. Yet emotionally, something feels different. You're more irritable than you used to be. Small things get under your skin. Your patience runs thinner, even with people you care about. And afterward, you sometimes wonder why you reacted that way. This is one of the most overlooked effects of declining testosterone. Mood doesn't suddenly crash, it drifts. You feel less emotionally steady. Your tolerance for frustration drops. Situations that once rolled off your back now linger in your mind. You replay conversations. You carry tension longer. And because men are rarely taught to talk about emotional changes, you often keep this to yourself. You might notice you're less optimistic than before. Not negative exactly, but cautious. You expect things to take more effort. You brace yourself mentally before tasks that used to feel routine. Over time, this shapes how you approach life. You stop leaning forward into challenges and start protecting your energy instead. There's also a subtle shift in how connected you feel to others. Conversations feel more transactional. You listen, but you don't always feel fully present. Even around people you trust, there's a sense of emotional distance you can't quite explain. It's not that you don't care, it's that the emotional spark feels dimmer. This can show up in relationships in quiet ways. You're still there physically, but mentally you're often somewhere else. You respond instead of engaging. You avoid deeper conversations, not because you don't value them, but because they feel draining. Over time, this can create misunderstandings. Others may think you've changed while you're still trying to understand what's happening yourself. Low testosterone affects how the brain processes emotion and reward. When levels decline, your emotional range can narrow. Joy feels less intense. Stress feels heavier. Motivation feels conditional. This isn't a personality flaw. It's chemistry influencing perception. Another common experience is increased self-doubt. You question your decisions more than you used to. You second guess your instincts. Even when you know what to do, you hesitate. This doesn't come from lack of skill or experience. It comes from losing that quiet internal certainty that used to guide you. Confidence at its core is not loud. It's a calm belief that you can handle what's in front of you. When testosterone drops, that belief can weaken. You still function, but you feel less grounded, less sure, less willing to take risks, even small ones. This emotional shift often feeds into mental fatigue. Your thoughts feel heavier. It's harder to shake off a bad day. You carry stress home instead of releasing it. Sleep doesn't fully reset your mind, so each day starts with a little more weight than the last. Many men interpret this as aging emotionally. They tell themselves they're just becoming more serious or realistic. But there's a difference between wisdom and emotional dullness. Wisdom brings clarity and calm. Hormonal imbalance brings friction and fatigue. What makes this especially tricky is how normalized it feels. You look around and see other men dealing with similar stress. Everyone seems tense. Everyone seems tired. So you assume this is just adulthood. You don't question it. You adapt. But adaptation comes at a cost. When emotional resilience declines, life feels narrower. You stop pushing into growth. You avoid discomfort instead of mastering it. You trade curiosity for predictability. And slowly, your world becomes smaller, even if your responsibilities stay the same. The most important shift happens when you stop viewing these emotional changes as a character issue. You're not becoming weaker. You're not losing discipline. Your system is asking for support, not criticism. Awareness creates space. It allows you to observe your reactions instead of judging them, to notice patterns instead of blaming yourself. And once you see that your mood, patience, and confidence are connected to your internal health, you regain leverage. You start listening instead of pushing, adjusting instead of forcing, supporting your body so your mind can stabilize again. Because emotional strength isn't about suppressing feelings. It's about having the internal resources to respond with clarity instead of reaction. And the moment you recognize that these quiet emotional shifts are signals, not flaws, is the moment you take the first step back toward feeling like yourself again. Over time, the physical changes become harder to ignore, even if you try. You may still recognize yourself in the mirror, but your body doesn't respond the way it once did. Strength feels more difficult to maintain. Fat appears in places that never used to hold it. Recovery slows down. And no matter how disciplined you are, something feels different beneath the surface. This shift often creates confusion because you haven't suddenly stopped caring about your health. You still move your body. You still try to eat reasonably well. You still push yourself when you can. Yet the results don't reflect the effort anymore. You lift weights, but progress feels stalled. You take time off, but soreness lingers. You push hard one day, and the next day your body asks for more rest than it used to. This isn't your imagination. Testosterone plays a major role in how your body builds and preserves muscle, how it distributes fat, and how quickly it recovers from stress. When levels begin to decline, your body shifts into a more conservative mode. It holds on to fat more easily and lets go of muscle more quickly. Not because you're failing, but because the signals that support physical resilience are weaker. One of the earliest changes men notice is around the midsection. The waistline thickens even when calories haven't increased much. Shirts fit tighter. Pants sit differently. You may feel frustrated because the usual fixes don't work the way they used to. Cutting calories leaves you tired. Adding cardio drains your energy. Lifting harder doesn't bring the same return. At the same time, muscle tone fades quietly. Arms look softer. Legs feel less powerful. You're still capable, but your body doesn't feel as solid or responsive. This can affect confidence more than most men admit. Physical strength has always been tied to identity, even if you've never talked about it out loud. Recovery is another area where changes show up clearly. In your 20s, a hard workout energized you. In your 30s and 40s, it may leave you depleted. Joints feel stiffer. Tendons complain. Small injuries take longer to heal. You start modifying movements not because you want to, but because your body insists. This physical slowdown can lead to frustration and self-blame. You wonder if you've lost discipline. You question your routine. You compare yourself to your younger self and feel disappointed. But comparison hides the truth. Your body is operating under a different internal environment now. What's important to understand is that testosterone doesn't just affect muscle size. It affects how your body repairs itself, how it responds to training, how it adapts to stress. When levels are healthy, effort sends a clear signal to rebuild stronger. When levels are low, the signal becomes weaker and less reliable. That's why pushing harder often backfires. More volume, more intensity, and more restriction don't fix the problem. They add stress to a system that's already struggling to recover. Over time, this can create a cycle of overtraining and under-recovery, where fatigue builds faster than progress. This physical shift also influences posture, movement quality, and even how you carry yourself. You may feel less spring in your step, less power when you move quickly, less confidence in your body's ability to respond when challenged. That awareness can quietly change how you engage with the world. Many men adapt by lowering expectations. They stop chasing strength. They accept slower movement. They avoid activities that once made them feel alive. This feels practical in the moment, but over years it leads to a gradual physical decline that feels inevitable, even though it doesn't have to be. The key insight here is that these changes are not a verdict on your future. They're feedback. Your body is telling you that the old strategies may no longer match your current biology, and biology responds best to support, not punishment. When you align training, recovery, and lifestyle with your hormonal reality, the body can stabilize, adapt, and even improve. Longevity isn't about holding on to your peak forever. It's about preserving function, strength, and confidence as you age. It's about staying capable, resilient, and engaged in your physical life. And that begins with listening to what your body has been quietly trying to tell you. Because the moment you stop fighting these physical changes and start understanding them is the moment your strength becomes sustainable again. What all of this comes down to is this: you are not powerless, and decline is not inevitable. Your body has been sending signals quietly, and now you have the awareness to respond. Understanding these changes gives you a map, not a sentence. Energy, strength, confidence, and focus can all be restored when you work with your biology, not against it. Every small step you take today, improving sleep, supporting recovery, fueling your body, moving with purpose, creates momentum that compounds over time. The men who thrive after 35 aren't superhuman. They are the ones who notice the quiet signs, act early, and make consistent choices that honor their body and future. This is your chance to reclaim your vitality, protect your energy, and step into a life where you feel capable, strong, and confident every single day. The power to change your trajectory isn't in the distant future. It's in the actions you choose right now.